Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Red Room. I'm Heather Carlisle, and thank you for joining me this evening. This is part 2 of 6 parts where we explore the components of a marriage relationship or an intimate relationship. And last week we talked about knowing ourselves and taking care of ourselves and knowing our personal needs. And tonight it's about common values. Now, there's quite a subtle and philosophical distinction between needs and values. So I've done my best to make a separation between those. And of course, everybody's heard of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? And if you go on the internet, there are beautiful pictures, images of Maslow's model. And they mostly look kind of like this. And you know that Maslow has those 5 levels of needs that we all have. And tonight I want to talk about how we build our values on top of those needs. So if you want to look at my very favorite and most detailed image of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, you're going to find that one. And that one comes from the Adlerian psychotherapy website. So it gives us some details about our needs. Now, our basic needs, of course, the physical needs, where we need to have survival and food and home, all of those physiological needs. And then the next needs, we learn about those very early, and that's about the interpersonal needs, how we connect and bond with other people, how we share love, how we have family and friendship and sexual intimacy. And then built on that are the needs that come later, where we're developing the can-do kid. And the can-do kid is the natural way that each one of us has self-esteem developed. And when you're little, it's not difficult to help a child develop natural self-esteem. You know exactly how to set them up to say, oh, you did that. Oh, that's great. Look at how excellent you are at tying your shoe. Or you put all your toys back in the right place. You're a very orderly person. You're good at that. So little pieces of teaching about those skills that make us feel confident and know that we're worthy for the rest of our lives as we build more and more complex tasks or obligations or activities that we like. So, and then of course, the top level is self-actualization. And of course, that's a huge, broad subject and has many components. And actually, it doesn't stop for the entire lifespan. Us finding all of that which is in us, knowing it, expressing it, and wielding it to serve the world. So anytime you want to chime in with a question, I love that. Otherwise, I will keep teaching about this topic. So what we want, and last time you were able to download the model that I've created so that on one page we can see all the things necessary for a marriage relationship. Now these are the 6 components that lie inside the heart, that heart on my model. And that is the components of a marriage or an intimate relationship. So I'm going to walk through those 6 parts. Sometimes when a couple comes to see me, we'll be talking about what their difficulties are, what they came for, what they need. And we'll find that their lives are very full, and yet their relationship is pretty thin, doesn't have much in it. It's not uncommon that that happens to 2 people who are very devoted parents, and they spend most of their time mentoring their kids, going to kids' games, making sure the children get everything that they need. And they don't spend much time or equal time or important time with each other on staying connected. and keeping those 6 elements necessary for a relationship, a marriage, to feel bonded, strong, good, happy, creative. So tonight I wanted to talk about how we need to have common values. Yes, we need to get our needs met, but our values are how we choose to value different things in life. And when couples come to see me, usually one of the things they say is, we fight too much, or we have too much conflict, or we disagree too much. And they end up butting heads and even being disrespectful and sometimes being abusive. They are usually lost in some disagreement about a value that they have different viewpoints on, or different levels of valuing. One person may think it's a core value. It's something that they can't compromise. Like something really important and big, like having children. And the other person says, well, that's a good idea, but it's not really that important to me. What we want, if one person has a huge investment in a certain value, then the other person, if they love them unconditionally, and they don't have a big problem with that, will say, I love you so much. Let's talk about how we create that. Not just for you, but for us and for our marriage. Now, I really don't like the word compromise. It always feels like somebody's losing, you know? Or somebody's in some way not being treated fairly. I don't think about it as compromise. In a great relationship, when you really love each other, it doesn't feel like compromise to come from your side over to their side on something that they really believe in, have a core value, and something that's sacred to them. Now, for example, you and I know people, you probably have friends like this, where one of them, man or woman, has a passion for a certain sports team, and that something in them is driven to cheer that sports team on, to go to their games, to watch them on TV, and it's a celebration of life in certain ways. And when you marry somebody who isn't that keen on it, when they marry that person, the two of them work out how to make sure that the one who loves cheering on that sports team and has placed it at a pretty high value is supported in the relationship, in the marriage, to enjoy that. Now, it just depends on the spouse that they've married, whether that spouse says, well, I really don't know the rules of football. I'd like to know. So let's watch this one at home, and you teach me what's going on. And then it becomes an interactive, learning, playful thing. Or it can be, you're watching the football game again. You're not paying any attention to me. And I'm pretty bored. And if I do that often enough, I'm going to get frustrated, resentful, and finally angry, and then we're going to have fights. So it's really important for us when we get into an intimate relationship to kind of, over the first few years, notice what your partner loves and find out how you can either be okay with that, or enjoy it, or support them in it. And it takes a couple of years when you enter into a serious relationship to go down all the different alleys, all the different roads in life, and experience those things together. And you know, when a couple gets married or moves in together and makes a lifetime commitment, you know, at that point, there's no going back. And I think about it as you can't withhold anything. Everything is important. There's no holding back. And this, you want to give all that you take, because this is for keeps. And when it's for keeps, you want to treat it with the utmost respect. But that first year of coming together, living together, of marriage, usually it's extremely difficult, if not hell. Now, they don't usually tell us that. They say that, oh, you find your loved one, the one, you get married, and now you've got that one. Well, yeah, that's right there on the third level of a hierarchy of needs at the highest level, which is family, love, intimate relationship, sexuality. So you've got that one met, except for now, it goes to a much higher level of complexity. And I really don't advocate compromise. I think that when you really love somebody, you're very interested in what they're interested in, even if it's not one of your interests. Maybe it's their value, maybe it's not your value, and you find a way together to build that into your life so that it's a good thing and nobody feels like they're being deprived. So, any questions about this? Any examples that you have of when the values don't match? Now, when the values match right on the surface, there you go. You know, both people just love downhill skiing. Both people want 3 kids. Both people are very responsible and prosperous with their money, and they talk easily about that, and they know exactly what they're doing about it. Both people love spending time with family, both his family, her family, and they all get together. You know, that's the easy way, right? And so many times we do have those values that we share. It's part of falling in love, saying, oh, you love lemon meringue pie too? That's my favorite. We find all those things that we love together. Not that that was a very serious example. Okay. So I shared a list with you, which you have on your screen to download if you want to, of one list that I have of universal values. Now, the long list of universal values I have really is, I've been working on this for a while. People kind of get mixed up values and virtues. Virtues are those qualities that we cultivate within ourselves and how we choose to think, express ourselves, and behave in life. So those are more like our own mastery, our own behavior. And yes, being a virtuous woman is one of my highest values. And of course, if Jack wasn't interested in living a virtuous life, then it would be hard to respect his behavior, because it's not, in a certain sense, ethical, even though there are other ways of expressing and listing your creed or your ethics or how you want to be an honorable person and an honorable character. So sometimes we get those two lists mixed up of what are virtues and what are values. Because yes, I value respect and responsibility, but that's more a part of my virtuous nature and my character. So if you'll notice, I've got some of that in this values list that you were able to download. And I've separated it into groups so that you kind of get a hang of how values are important and not important, depending on who you are, how old you are, where you came from, what your family's like, how you see yourself in the world, what kind of lifestyle you want. So, somebody, give me a question. Tell me about a tough time you had with mismatched values. So the general categories I've created for values are lifestyle. Some people want to have a very formal, elegant, traditional lifestyle. Other people want casual, easygoing, fun. Other people want sporty, athletic, active. All different ways. And you know, when we fall in love with the beloved, usually, not always, but usually That's one of the things that feels like we're twin souls because we have those same interests. And Jack and I share a passion for music, all different kinds of music in different ways. And we also share a passion for European culture. So that right there we have what I call two portals, two doorways to walk through that have oodles of opportunities to experience and bring into our lives and enjoy together. That's what I dream of for people. Now it's like when a couple comes to me, maybe they got married when they were 20 years old, and here they are 30, and they found out that his passion, more than anything in the world, his highest value, what he really loves and what renews him and what he wants to do is camping and backpacking and hiking. And what they found out is she completely dislikes it and really doesn't want to do that. She would rather go to a symphony concert. So when we've got that much disparity and neither person really wants to go into the other person's world, then our task in building the marriage is, well, we want to respect each of those portals and let him go camping and hiking and let her go to hear classical music. And we've got to find some portals that open a doorway for them to share something of high value to both of them. And sometimes people haven't found those yet. So I have a list of, it's about 8 pages long, different activities and things that people like to do in life. And I have people go through that. I call it my passion list and edit it down to just the pieces that they like. And then what we do is we see if we can find some way to cross those lists over so that there are some that dovetail. If there's only one, sometimes that's enough. You know, if they find out, oh my gosh, both of us have always wanted to rebuild houses. Well, you and I know if that's a mutual passion, it's easy to put energy into that and it'll last them a lifetime. So lifestyle, then nature. Excuse me. Some people love the outdoors, nature, trees, animals, trips to the beach. Some people have a very specific way they want to interact socially or with other people or with their family or with friends. And we all need, that's one of those core needs that we have. But we all have different values about how we want that to appear in our lives. Now, some people really want to have an interaction with other people when it has to do with maybe serving your political community. Sometimes it's about the soccer league. Sometimes it's about a church or a religion. Different core values each of us has in terms of just how we want people in our lives. Sometimes we want to visit nursing homes and be tender with the elderly or be funny with them. Sometimes we want to be with little kids. Sometimes we don't want anybody around at all except our beloved. So that's people and society as well. Then we have different interests, sports, hobbies, different ways we like to play and have fun and have pleasure, different systems of values about, and this is probably interesting, systems of values about how we think. We want to, in certain ways in an intimate relationship, be able to respect each other's style of thinking. And you and I know that one of the top needs for a relationship is that, and we're going to talk about this next week, that we are best friends. That means that we need to communicate deeply and completely and often. And if we don't have a like value in the way we think, we're going to be communicating in different ways. And so looking at how we value thoughts and what we think about and how we think. Isn't that interesting? So some people like a positive attitude. Some people like an intelligent attitude. Some people like studying, knowledge, information, always learning. Some people like teaching. Some people like knowing what is the truth. Some people like inner peace and calm. So those are different values in how we use our minds and how we think. Um, Next one is security. This is one of those core values right down at the bottom of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And yet our values lie in how we need that security. You know, some people say, all the security I need is that I know that we're together and we'll make it somehow. We'll both get jobs for whatever country we're in, whatever is available in that town, we'll find jobs and we'll be great, we'll be fine. Other people want to live a very complex quality of life that requires huge financial security and earning power. And if we don't have a like-minded value in how we see safety and security, our home, our financial situation, the people that we hang out with, that can disrupt all of the other things built on top of it. So we want to, if there are differences there, we want to pay real attention to them. And again, I don't think about it as compromise. I think about it as, how do I do the loving thing with this person who is more important to me than anybody in the world? So if we go into it with an attitude of compromise, you know, right at the get-go, it says, well, because of you, I can't have certain things, which then we're blaming the other person and playing victim to that, rather than saying, how do we find our style? Which is why my book is called Designer Marriage. Each one of us designs our style the way we want it. Nobody has a right to tell you how to live your life in your own home and in your intimate relationship. You can design it the way you want. And, of course, bottom line, you want to do it in a way that is loving and respectful to your twin soul, your lover, your partner, your spouse. Our character, of course, you know, one of the things that we think about when we think about shared values and core values is trust. Trust, commitment, faithfulness, accountability, and that's really a part of our virtuous character, where what we bring to the relationship is someone who wants to do the right thing and is equipped with the self-mastery to follow through on commitments and to be discerning, both able to be private and vulnerably open with boundaries in a wise and respectful way to everyone involved. So those parts of our character really are never going to go away, and they're always important. And as you know, if trust is broken, especially when someone has an affair or spends and loses all the financial security in their marriage, it takes time to rebuild that trust. It's critical that you know and appreciate and trust each other. Any questions? Any examples of when this has been a tough thing for you? Spirituality. There are so many different ways of having values in our spiritual life, in our spiritual practices, how we have spiritual ritual or not, in our personal space, in our home, in our social life, in our weekly rituals. We want to be able to respect that with each other. So if sometimes one person really wants to go to a religious service, and the other person, well, it's like, I really don't like that. If they find a way where they support each other in that, that would be my ideal, where the person who really loves to go to the service goes happily, freely. The person at home says, bye, have a good time. And when the person comes back from the religious service, their spouse is waiting and saying, okay, tell me about the lesson today. What was it that lifted you up? What made you think? So that there's a mutual respect and interest in some way that you design in your relationship. And then, of course, there's physical health. Um, I've got a question over here. For us both, financial security and sex have been our two major problems. Oh my. And those are big, aren't they? And those are unquestionable values. Financial security, it's like the rock solid foundation that undergirds everything. And it's interesting how, you may come from a family where we don't have any debt, we don't buy anything until we have the money in the bank. And they're very careful with their money, probably because they were taught by parents who had a hard time and were pretty stringent and pretty inflexible with what they did because they knew how to make it work that way. Then there's somebody that comes from a family where they're investors, they're deal makers, they've lost $1 million, they've made it over again, and they have their 401k, but sometimes they invest it and then they lose it all, they make it back, so it's a very financially dramatic thing. And then, of course, there are those families where they spend everything they have and they end up having a tire blowout and they don't know where they're going to replace their blown up tire, or they don't have money for when somebody needs to go to the dentist or the doctor. And that's immature, irresponsible, and not living to adult values where we take care of ourselves, because we want that bottom line need for health, survival, safety, and security. We need all those things met. Otherwise, whatever else is built on top of them is going to be troubled. So financial security, and especially, oh dear, the stories that I've heard in these times, how people have lost jobs, lost their nest eggs, are looking at selling their houses because our financial situation goes up and down so dramatically in world affairs now. That means being very intelligent and very adult, talking about it sincerely and with real information and data. You want to get the specific data of what it costs and what you're going to need. If you don't have that data, then it becomes emotional. And if you don't have a way to trust each other with money, then that's very serious. And I would want you to come and see somebody like me to work that out so that you've got it handled and you don't need to worry about it together. When we think about how much money we need, how much financial security we need, it's hugely dimensioned. And what is it that we always say? The most important thing is love. And so if you have had a downturn, if you're older, or if you've lost your job, or if your kids are little, or if your kids are out of the nest, sometimes we need to say, all right, we need to reduce our expenses, which means we'll move to a smaller house, or we'll move to another county or another city to find a way where you can live decently and support your real values, which are staying together and being happy together, being respectful with each other. So I like to remind us that money is just arithmetic. Now, if you get into high-level finance and investments, it's way beyond arithmetic. But for most of us, it's just logic. It's just numbers. It's just arithmetic, which means anybody can do it. And sometimes it's hard to pay attention to it. That's when I'd recommend that you have a marriage meeting where you get your papers out, you get your data out, you have a cup of coffee or a glass of wine, and you put it all out there on your table, and take a few hours to start thinking it through. It may take a few meetings to get it all unsorted, or go to some kind of a financial service or advisor that can help you sort it out, because that kind of difficulty, that kind of a problem needs to be solved. It is arithmetic, it is logic, and it needs to be solved. So I encourage you to do that if you haven't already figured out how. And then that sex has been a major problem. And that's foundational to all intimate relationships. we have a need to be connected sexually for many, many reasons. And our sexual nature is such a private nature, and it's so connected to our core, excuse me, that other things in life, maybe there are specific things that are getting in the way of your sexual happiness and your intimacy. Like one of you was violated when you were a child, or you've got religious teachings that made you feel so guilty you're not happy in your body, and you're afraid of being free and open with your sexuality. We know lots of those stories, don't we, in our time? And sometimes one partner or both get addicted to unhealthy sexual practices with the pornography industry and such. But usually with most ordinary people, our sex life is interrupted by we're tired, we're already working a job, we're taking care of our kids, and those things are top priority. We can't put them on hold. And it ends up that when we finally get to making love, we're both just don't have the energy, too tired, and it's like, I need the sleep. Or sometimes you're irritated with each other, and for whatever reason you have another conflict that's affecting you emotionally. And when you get emotionally upset with each other, or resentful or angry, your sexual response is displaced. So when we have negative feelings, not always, but usually, our sexual feelings are displaced by whatever problem it is, because we need to solve that problem so that we can relax and come together with sexiness and playfulness and pleasure. Am I speaking correctly for you? Is this valid for the troubles that you feel like you've had with that? And I know that different people place different values on being sexually intimate. And of course, we've got different sexual levels of libido. Different people have different physical experience of craving and desire. And different people have different emotional experiences of craving this sexual contact. Because one of the 5 love languages is physical affection. And the highest level of physical affection in an intimate relationship, of course, is being sexy with each other and making love. Have I covered the field of your concerns with the major problems that you've had, or have you already solved them? I'd be interested in if you solved them and how you've solved them. So that's part of our physical system of values. Then we've got culture, success, independence, happiness, structure, and citizenship. So culture, we have different values in culture. And it was fun. We had a 4th of July party recently, and Jack was playing music with his iPad. And so he was programming all different kinds of music. And the kids said, would you play some of our music? Jack said, well, I'll play some Messiaen, and then I'll play some metal. So hopefully you have cultural style that your values in terms of fine arts and culture match in some way. Let's see. The question, I think you're right on. He wants it, I don't. I do it anyway, because that's what a wife should do. But I would rather sleep at the end of the day. We're definitely going to meet with you in the near future. I would love to see you and help you with that. I've heard this so many times, and it comes from my mother's generation, my mother and father's generation, that that's what a wife should do. Now, that kind of puts a slant on being sexual with each other as an obligation rather than part of an intimate relationship where it's your pleasure to find the things that meet your lover's highest values. You know, I don't want to bring home something that Jack doesn't like to eat. I always want to bring home what he likes, and he goes in the cupboard and says, "Oh, there are ice cream sandwiches in the freezer, and the ones that the ones that he likes. That's what I want to do." So it's the same thing with our sexual nature, and of course, there are two huge dimensions of difference with gender difference in our sexuality, both physically and emotionally, of course, and in our thinking process. And if you're interested in all of the details about that, the romantic bond is largely around our sexiness, our chemistry, and that's section number 5. So tonight is number 2. And so if you want to specifically hear me talk all about your sexual romantic bond, tune in for section 5. That says to me that maybe your husband gets energy and gets contentment from having sex with you, even though he's tired, and that it feels like having sex with him takes too much more energy from you. And that may be. And so then what I would want to do is to coach the two of you in how you can get an orgasm or be sexy with each other or make love in a way where you take care of each other, where it doesn't feel like you're, well, meeting an obligation, what a wife should do. She says, "Thank you. Our new date night is listening to you." Is listening to you on Wednesday. That's fabulous. Thank you so much. That's really, I never thought of it that way, but I think that's a great way to market the Red Room. It's date night. Thank you for telling me that. That's great. That's cool. So one of the ways that we want is for you to not feel like it's what a wife has to do, because we don't want you obligated to have sexual pleasure with him. We want you to have just as much pleasure as he does. The truth is that even when you're tired, it's like exercising. When you do make love and you do get a good orgasm, afterwards you're saying, "Oh, I feel so good." You may be tired, but you feel really good tired. That's what I would want for any couple. And we'll talk more about that later when number 5 comes up. Another whole system of values is around success. And we have a different way of defining success, don't we? And some people actually have fear of failure, so they don't really want that much success. And just certain levels of success is what feels good to them. So how your success values are with each other, how they match, that can be either a source of troubles or sadness or irritation or disrespect. Some people really have a strong ambition and a strong drive to succeed. And if the other person doesn't believe in that, then they've lost an opportunity to cheer on their spouse or to celebrate their successes and say, "Look at what you've done for us in our marriage and our life and our family with this great value and success that you have. I'm behind you all the way. Even though I don't have that value, I can honestly, sincerely appreciate it in you and thank you completely for what you provide because of that energy that you bring to our lives." Some people have a success value in meaningful work. And this is one of my favorite examples. I love teachers. Teachers, whatever level, whether it's daycare, elementary, high school, college, corporate. So often, especially in our public schools, our teachers aren't valued financially the way we hope they would be, and I hope that changes over the next generations. So when a person has a value in being a teacher, sometimes that is their success. How many lives they change versus somebody else's success is how much income or how many raises they get that reflect their ability. So we want to be able to appreciate each other's type of value and how we feel successful. One of my great moments of success is when I can help them preserve a marriage or heal a marriage or keep a marriage alive. That is one of the ultimate thrills for me. And thank goodness Jack agrees with that value 100%. And to the degree that he just created my new website, relationshipcruises.com, so that when I provide these cruise experiences for couples, he'll be there. Maybe not all of them as time goes by, but he'll be there because he wants to help me. He loves what I do. So that kind of success he really appreciates. And of course, his success in how he writes music. I revere that in him. So when he writes a piece of music and he records it in the most perfect way he knows how, that's one of his successes. And I'm right there, the kind of wife that admires him deeply for being invested in that kind of success. So we want you to share your values in success or be able to appreciate the other person's way of feeling successful. Independence. Shared value in independence. Some people want freedom and privacy and quiet time. Some people want, really and truly, they want dependence. They've learned in their life that, and usually this is the woman, of course, not always, but usually, where she knows that in the kind of marriage she wants, she will depend on her husband to be the provider so that she can be a full-time mom, or that she can pursue the art form that makes her feel independent in her own identity. And if they have an agreement with those two values, it can be a fabulous relationship. Very different values, but a sincere appreciation for the other person's value, if not adoring them for it. You know, I have a real sense of adoring a man who shoulders that responsibility to provide and protect. I think it's so big. I think it's such a heavy responsibility, and yet most healthy men, they just put on that cloak of provider, protector, and say, yeah, this is what I do, and I do it because I love you. And because I'm so feminine, that's one of the ways that I can always admire a man's values. And I think most of us healthy women do as well. And then there's happiness. Have you ever encountered a family, and you know, they will go to therapy and sometimes they'll be diagnosed and they'll be told that depression is an inherited thing in their genes. And I don't really agree with that. I think that that is a value in attitude. And if you grew up from the time you were born to parents or a family that kind of had an Eeyore attitude, you know what I mean? There are families like that, aren't there? And you don't really want, if you're a happy person, you don't want to be around them. Oh, we'll never forget. I mean, she's dead and gone, and so is everyone in that family, so I'll tell you about this. My first mother-in-law was one of those people that played the game, you know, games people play. She had a value in playing Ain't It Awful? You know, ain't it awful that it's raining all day today? Ain't it awful that the state senator did thus and so? Ain't it awful that the kids are doing this nowadays? Whatever it was. And I'm a positive person. I always have been. And she was my new mother-in-law. And so, in my mind, you make your bed, you lie in it, right? Which means I made a commitment. I will stand by my commitment, which means I needed to find a way to be with this lady every week. So I don't know if this is the good choice, best choice or not. I was very young. I chose to play Sunny Side Up. And I know she was a little irritated with me after a while, but she didn't really quite know why. Because every time she said, ain't it awful? Like, ain't it awful that it's raining all day today? I would say, well, the flowers really needed the rain today. It's been a drought. Yeah, oh yeah, you're right. Isn't it terrible what the state senator did? And said, yeah. And yet, people were calling for that change of law. Oh yeah. So I did not have an equal value in Ain't It Awful. And I don't have much value in being depressed or being gripey or whiny. Some people really like to be Eeyore, and they like to play Ain't It Awful. I think that comes largely, now, of course, not 100%, but largely I really believe that when we find ourselves being a depressed personality or around people that are depressed or negative, if you look at their family, you'll see that that's what they grew up around. That was the habit. That was the emotional habit, the mental habit in their home. And in essence, they didn't place a value on playfulness and humor and lightheartedness. And so they placed a value on being troubled or concerned or too sincere or holier than thou, whatever it was. So we have different levels or different types of values in happiness and attitude. Sometimes that can get in the way of the foundation of a great marriage relationship. And then, of course, two more. The last two kind of systems of values are structure and citizenship. So structure. Now, we've all encountered those people where one is a neatnik and the other one just is chaotic. And I've spent many hours in my office mediating this and assisting people. Now, if we've got a real neatnik, somebody that was raised in a family where they were taught from childhood to put away their toys, to make their bed, to hang their clothes up, so that it's second nature. It doesn't take any extra effort for them. That's just how they go about life. And it feels good. Order usually feels, it saves energy in finding things. It saves energy in your visual space is clean and clear. Lots of different things. And then they'll be married to somebody who was not taught from childhood to hang their clothes up or to put their towels in the hamper or to go through the magazines and throw away the old ones, or to have a place in the house where all the mail was opened on the desk. It's just kind of littered around, etc. Or clean the bathroom maybe once every 4 months. Different homes are different ways for various different reasons. And a designer marriage says you design your marriage in your home so that the two of you feel good about it. Now, sometimes the ultra neatnik says, I adore you. And if you want to, have a little chaos in your office or just leave the clothes on the floor in your bathroom because I don't have to go in your bathroom and the cleaning person takes care of that, that'll work. So sometimes there's I don't like the word compromise, but that's a way of saying, I can let go of that one. Or then there's the other way where it's complete misery for one of them. And that's a time when, again, this is shared, strong values. And what you want to do is treat it not emotionally, not in arguments, not in putting your foot down, not in feeling like, poor me, I'm a victim, but taking those topics into a marriage meeting. and talking sincerely and clearly, not with, you know, humor that's discounting, not with, well, I don't need a marriage meeting, but with sincerity and saying, let's talk about this, dear. Let's figure this out. And the sooner you do it, dears, the better. Um, the last system of values is citizenship. Now, some people want to live in a democracy. You know that couple, and you know the one that I'm talking about in America, where one of them is a Democrat and one is a Republican. And they're like fire, but they're married. And they have found out a way where their political natures are very different and yet respectedly different. And then it becomes not a fight, but kind of a juicy debate. So obviously they're very mature and very healthy about that difference in their values. Some people really value justice, some diversity, some harmony, and they want to do something about that in the world. And so what we want in a marriage is for both spouses to be able to support whatever that value is, if it's a top value. So when you've got differing values, we definitely want you to be able to work out and solve the problem. And you remember the number one predictor of divorce? You remember that? It's avoidance of conflict. So if you have differing values, we want you to come right together as soon as you can in a nice way, you know, over a nice dinner with a pad and pencil, out in the patio by the pool, over a glass of wine in your living room, or snuggled up in bed together, and talk about it and say, how can we be creative with this? You like this and I like this. I love you. You love me. Let's figure it out. Let's solve the problem so that both systems of values are reverenced. We design our marriage the way we want to design it. And I want you to design your marriage so that it supports both of you in your common values, and it also supports you in your core strong values that may be differing in certain ways. Any questions before I sign off tonight, everyone? And thank you so much for tuning in. It always makes it so much more fun to know that my teaching is reaching somebody right now and I can answer your questions tonight. So tonight we were talking about the second of 6 parts, and this was about shared values, common values, because if we don't have those, it's hard to build the other parts of a marriage on top of them. So thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in tonight. I love this experience. Sharing with you and answering your questions is very special to me. So thanks a lot. And I wish you good night and see you next week, same time, 8 o'clock p.m. Central Time in the Red Room. And next week, we're going to talk about number 3 in the components of a great marriage relationship, and that is best friends. Best friends meaning honest communication, domestic support, and shared recreation. So that's what we'll talk about next week. Thank you for tuning in, everyone. And I'll see you in the Red Room next week. Good night.